better. There we go. All right, so I have the catalog turned to the page. Not only are we making that fun pinwheel card, we are using this really sweet and popular Bloom Where You're Planted bundle. So this is a new bundle from the new catalog. It is very on trend with all the little house plants and the fresh, leafy, natural look. I'm using the stamp set, and I'm using the wonderful dies that go along with the Bloom Where You're Planted set. When you purchase them together, of course, you save 10%, so that's always a good idea. That's what we're going to be working with. The stamp set has lots of great images, the little plants and the pots, and it has some nice sentiments. And you know how I feel about the stamp sets that have both the images and the sentiments that go with it. So a little note with the biggest thanks. You were there, and I am very grateful. Thank you to a dear friend. Love you, and you touched my heart. So really sweet sentiments to use on your card. The bundle includes coordinating perfect plant dies, and that there's some that cut out your stamped images, and so you can cut your pots, you can cut your leaves and little plants. You even have the containers, and you have extras, those little decorative wire holders or plant stands that will cut as well. There's this awesome hanging, like a macrame die, really, really fun dies to cut everything that you're going to need. But here's the kicker. Stampin' Up! Is always thinking for us, and what they've done is created the coordinating paper. And today I have used all of the patterns. I ran through every sheet that is offered in the paper stack, and I realized, oh, I used some from every sheet. So there's pretty brick, and on the flip side, beautiful leaves in different tones of green. So we have Just Jade, the new oh, let's see, I can't recall what it's called, the Evening Evergreen. And next piece of designer series paper just has like a textured effect to it, like it may be a very, very faint slate color. And on the flip side, we have some growing greenery, which is really cool because one sheet, if you cut it right down the middle, you will have this repeated pattern at the bottom and then also at the top. So it really makes your projects go further. We have a great brick background. I'm using it on the project. And on the flip side, we have beautiful Evening Evergreen sprays of leaves. Here's one of the fun sheets that I'm using. It's got the nice plants in the background, and the dies can cut the images in this paper. And so that's what I've done today. I have used the die to cut some of the, let's see, some of the elements for our project today. So there's a pattern where you can cut the leaves. On the flip side, we've got a nice little wood grain going on. We have another sheet that has the planters, and of course we've got the dies that will cut all of these little images here, which makes it really easy. That means there's no fussy cutting involved. Well, there is going to be a little bit of fussy cutting, but this really pares it down. So there's a die for the terracotta pot, the little oval pot, this two-handled pot. Makes it really easy. Flip side, we have a light neutral tone of some nice sprays of leaves. And then we have another pattern with the full-on plant. This one, there is no dies, so what I did was hand snip. You can see I've cut a couple of them. I've really enjoying this pack of paper. And then we have another wood grain on the back side. So those are the papers I'm using today. And I have cut lots of the patterns with the dies that coordinate in the set. So that's the Plentiful Plants stamp set. All right, so I've got that going on. Let me share with you then how to create this cool pinwheel card. So when it's standing, that's one of the cool things. You can stand it on the mantle. The recipient will get to glance at it and enjoy the sweet thoughts for a long time, because trust me, these little cards are treasures. So that's what it looks like from the top. And you can see when you look at it at the angles, you've got all the pinwheel sentiments and images going on for you. So that's what we're shooting for as we create our project today. My inks today are going to be Cajun Craze and Just Jade. And I pulled those straight out from the designer series paper. Now my papers that I'm using, let me push these aside. Let's start off with the cardstock. So today I'm choosing to use Very Vanilla. I don't use it very often, but I thought this had a nice little tint to it to go along with that designer series paper. This is not the thick cardstock. So normally I would say when you are building your card base to use the thick cardstock. It's more rigid, has more weight to it. But in this case, it's going to be lots of layers. You want to kind of eliminate some of that heaviness to the card. Plus you are going to be layering paper on both sides. So the regular cardstock weight is going to be working really well. And I've made myself a little note here. One size that you need is 5 3/4 by 4 1/4. Now we're going to do some scoring, but let me go on with the rest of the papers that we're going to need. We need 3 cardstocks that measure 2 3/4 by 4 1/4. So these are actually going to be layered onto our card. That's why they're the same height. Then we need some scrap for stamping. And then here we go with how I'm going to decorate. So this is what's going to vary for you. You can choose to decorate your card however you like. Again, I chose that coordinating paper. So my first pattern is that beautiful foliage, and this one measures 4 1/4 by 2 3/4. You need 4 of these measurements. You can use different patterns. You can use all the same. I'm using the front and I'm using the flip on this one. Then we need 3 that measure 4 1/4 by 2 inches. And again, I'm going to be using the front. I'm not going to be using the back of that one. I think I went ahead and cut 3 of the brick. So you're going to need 4 that measure 4 1/4 by 2. You'll need 4 that measure 4 1/4 by 2 3/4. And then look at this. I have my elements prepared. I cut directly from that pattern paper. I took a pot, one of the little arrangements of leaves, and I went ahead and die cut that macrame hanging plant hanger for this particular page. And then on the next page, let's see, try to keep these in order so I wouldn't get too confused. I again used that brick pattern paper. On the flip side, it's the same green. And then from the potted paper, I die cut this cute little 2-handled pot. And this particular little plant, I did have to hand snip. It didn't take me very long, but that's because I didn't want to waste too much of my designer series paper, because there are dies that will cut quite a bit of it. So for example, there's a die that cuts the 3-leaf. There's a die that cuts that 4 or 5-leaf. There is a die that cuts this nice tall cactus. I had to hand snip this little rounded cactus, and I hand snipped this one as well. So again, I didn't want to waste. And then I also die cut from this space in between the leaves, and I'll share with you where I did that. I didn't want to waste any of my pretty paper. So there we go. We've got that going on. And I'm going to be using the brick side of that green foliage paper as well. So there we go. And I'm using another one of the larger ones, 2 3/4. And I'm using the die cut paper, little rounded pot. And here's where I used my foliage. There is a die for this, and I just cut it off of some of this scrap in between the leaf paper. So I'm not wasting, and plus my little leaves are going to have varied green on them. And then look how cool this is, this little plant stand that is one of the die cuts in the set, and look how sweet. You can just slip your little pot right in there. This is part of the die cut to slip that in, and that's how we're going to create that little art for that page. Another pattern I've got is just that sandstone color. Flip side is that patterned with the leaves growing from the bottom and the top. I die cut that cute little pot, and I hand snipped this little succulent. So that's what we're going to use on that page. And then we've got one final page, 2 inches, that little sandstone pattern. And this is one that I had to hand snip. So that's what I'm going to be using to decorate. You'll see as we go along how easy this card came together. I am stamping as well, mostly for sentiments and a couple of the images. So let's get started. I'll share with you the base of the card first. So I'm going to bring in that 5 3/4 by 4 1/4, and I'm going to need my paper trimmer. And I'm just going to be trimming on this long end. So the long end measures 5 3/4. I am going to score, let's see if I can move some of this over. I'm going to score at 3/4 of an inch. So 1/4 of an inch before the 1, I am going to use my scoring blade. So I'm going to move that dark blade out of the way and score down. I'm going to push over to 1 1/2. So this is 3/4, 1 1/2, which is just double 3/4. And if I add on another 3/4, that would make it 2 1/4. So 3/4, 1 1/2, 2 1/4, and then finally up to 3. Oh, I just cut it. Yikes, I put my blade in the wrong position. Okay, so I'm gonna have to get another scrap. I cannot have that cut. Let's see if I've got one here. Nope, that one's too short. Let me grab another piece. So this actually works out perfectly anyway. Now I can demonstrate where I got the paper from. So because this measures 8 1/2, I'm going to just cut it in half vertically, and I will have my 4 1/2. And I need 5 3/4. So I'm going to rotate it and take it over to the 5 3/4 and cut. There we go. So let's try that again, moving that cutting blade out of the way. Okay. 3/4, so you get a rerun of this. The measurements are already on my head. They're actually pretty easy. The important measurement is 3/4. Now I'm going to push it up to 1 1/2, 2 1/4, and then finally 3. Remember to score, not cut. There we go. So again, 3/4, 1 1/2, 2 1/4, and 3. So each one of those scores is 3/4 of an inch wide, and we're done with the trimmer. And so now next what I'm going to do is fold this, and I'm going to burnish it right on those score lines. I'm just going to roll it and burnish. So it's 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to have a nice clean crisp fold, and again and again. So I'm just burnishing on each fold. And so this project was something I learned. It was part of a creative challenge in a group I belonged to. And I didn't make the challenge time, but I wanted to go ahead and give this card a try because it's so fun. So you may see it on other sites as well. Those are demos who participated in the challenge, no doubt. So here we go. What I'm going to do now, you can see once you roll that, you've got your pinwheel square there going on, and what we're going to do is secure that down. So we're going to put a little bit of adhesive on this first 3/4 of an inch, and we're going to secure that down. So I'm going to use my Tombow because I want nice aggressive, and what I'm going to do is put it right on that panel. That way I know how much or up to what area I can put the Tombow liquid glue. So now it's going to be folded in a square, so make sure you've got it all the way around. And it's just going to be folded just like so. So I'm creating that square that's the center of the pinwheel. And to secure it down, I'm going to be able to just fold it flat and burnish it down. And you're going to want to do this anyway, because when you mail it, you want to be able to have it flattened. So just using the bone folder to go ahead and burnish down. And I like to do this all the way so it's nice and secure in there. All right, so now we've got our first pinwheel going on. Next, we're going to take those 3 panels that measure 2 3/4 by 4 1/4, and we are going to adhere it onto each one of the sides of the square. So what I like to do is put the glue right onto the rectangle. That way I don't go over the area. I don't exceed my area for the adhesive. And then I'm just going to bring this in. I'm going to secure it down in here. And what I can do is just fold it down. Make sure it's tucked right in there. And burnish it down so we've got some nice contact. So we have now 2 of the wheels. So now I'm going to add my next panel, and on the next side of this square, right through here. And again, it's easier for me to bring it up, put it into position, and then push it down to burnish right through there. It's just going to be pushed right up. And see, that's why I love the Tombow as opposed to the seal. It's very forgiving. You're going to be able to push it right into place and burnish down. There we go. So now it's almost done. We have one more panel to secure to. That last one right there. So there's going to be our pinwheel there. So let's go ahead and put adhesive right on this panel. And right through here. And let's see if I can, there we go. Hopefully I'm in view where you can see. And I'm going to bring it down and push it in. Make sure it's all aligned. And in. There we go. All right, there we go. So that is the foundation of the card. Next, all we get to do is decorate. So you can choose to decorate however you want. I wanted to do my front panel first. So this is going to be my main greeting. So I'm going to fold it down. I'm going to be burnishing down. And I decided to do my first panel. And this is where my papers come in. So my first one is going to be that leafy arrangement. And I'm going to need to stamp my sentiment. So I'm going to bring in one of those little pieces that I ruined when I cut, and I'm going to do my stamping. So that's going to go there. And push that aside. See if I can do all my stamping at once. So this one is going to be my first sentiment, and it says, "A little note with the biggest thanks." I'm stamping in Cajun Craze. It is a photopolymer stamp set, so I'm going to go ahead and use my piercing mat to stamp on. And I'm just going to stamp down. So I need that. And I have a little bit of residual ink, but no problems because I'm going to be punching that out anyway. So the next sentiment I'm going to want is going to say grateful. And I've taken it from the sentiment in the stamp set that says, "You were there and I am very grateful." I'm just going to use that word grateful. So I'm going to take the sentiment and I'm just going to stamp. And I can do this down at the bottom. I'm only worried about that one word. So I'm not going to use the entire sentiment. There we go. And so next I have the sentiment that says, "You touched my heart." And still stamping in Cajun Craze. And I'm just going to stamp right here in the middle. We're going to be trimming that out. And my next sentiment is going to be on one of the pattern papers, so I don't need to stamp at the moment. I'm just going to push that ink out of the way so I don't get inky. And I'm going to go ahead and punch that sentiment that says, "A little note with the biggest thanks." And I'm kind of looking upside down. Hopefully I've got that centered right. That's going to be on my front. I'm going to go ahead and trim off the other two sentiments I'm using. And I'm using my paper trimmer so I don't have to try and cut straight. Let's see if I can use the trimmer correctly. Use the cutting blade. So I like to put a scrap of it's Stamparatus paper on my piercing mat. That way I don't waste as much paper, and I'm not getting my piercing mat inky when I have stamps that are bigger than my paper. Now this is going to measure about 3/4 of an inch. And I use the clip, that way the paper doesn't keep getting lost. Because you know me, I'm constantly losing my materials when they're right here in front of me. I don't know how that happens. Only to me, right? Nobody else. And I think this one is kind of cut at an angle. So I just take my paper snips and cut it at an angle. And all I'm doing right now is prepping my sentiments. And then I'm going to use that Grateful. So let's see if I can trim this down a little bit, make it easier to work with. And this one's going to measure, I think, about 1/2 inch, just over 1/2 inch. And this one's a little bit trickier once it gets small. And we just want that one word there. And I'm going to do the same effect at an angle right through here. There we go. So now we have our sentiments, most of them anyway, and we're ready to decorate. So because this is already pretty bulky, I'm using flat adhesive on a lot of the decorations. So I'm going to take that little label. And so if that were the front of a card, ordinarily I might use a Stampin' Dimensional to pop it up. But since this is going to be a multi-layered card, I'm just going to use a flat adhesive, like my favorite. Put a little bit on the back. And it's just going to go kind of towards the top, right like so. And this goes on my front page of my card, so right around there. And I'm just going to put a little bit of adhesive, and I'm doing just a little thin trail of adhesive so it doesn't ooze out. Right through there. And I'm going to butt that right to the edge. And there we go. Bring that down just a little bit. There we go. There is my card front. And I'm going to go ahead and use my bone folder to burnish that down. So the panel that's going to be popping out from behind it is going to be the brick panel. So what I'm going to do is fold that open. And let me think here. I think I have the wrong size, so no, I'm going to have to alter this a little bit, looks like. How does that work out? Oh, I know, I put it on the wrong side, so my card is kind of going to be flipped a little bit. So I'm going to come this way, and let's see. This one's going to be kind of flipped a little bit. I'm going to bring in my narrow brick panel right behind. And again, I'm going to be using my liquid adhesive, and I'm putting the paper directly onto the card base panels. That way I don't exceed the boundaries. Just like so. And let's see, this one is going to have the little brick wall here. And again, before I adhere this one, I am going to do something a little bit different here. This one is going to have the hanging plant. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to attach this together, the macrame and the little pot, right through here. And I'm just putting the tiniest little dots of glue in the wider areas of the macrame plant hanger. And I'm going to try and just stick that on here. Goes right atop the pot. And I'm going to take a tiny bit of my twine and cut a snip. And I'm going to string it through the macrame hanger. Do a little knot. And then this is going to go behind that brick wall. So it looks like this is hanging. So I'm going to put a little glue dot back here. And let's see, I think I want to do it that way. I'm going to put a glue dot back here so that I can secure that linen twine down. And I'm just using, I have lots of little glue dot scraps hanging around, so I'm trying to use those up instead of using the roll all the time. Just need, there we go. Pull that off. And so this is going to hang like so, and that little glue dot is going to hold my twine in place right through here. And let's see, I'm going to put my plant in, but I want it to kind of pop out. So I'm putting the leaves in, and I'm doing all of this prep before I actually secure it down. That way I can wiggle this around. There we go. So it's going to kind of pop through that macrame plant. This one, I am going to put a little dimensional on the back. So remember, I'm trying not to put too much dimension on the card because it's already going to come up pretty thick. I'm going to pull that down. And then I'm going to secure this little plant down. I'm just going to put a dot of my liquid glue back here so it doesn't wiggle. And it's in place. And so now I'm ready to adhere it to the card base. And again, just going to use my Tombow. And I'm going to bring this down here. Okay, so remember, your magic number is 3/4 to create the card base. So you're going to make 3 scores, or is it 3/4, 1 1/2, 2 1/4, and 3. Then your measurements for your 3 panels is 4 1/4 by 2 3/4. And then you need your designer series paper, 2 inches wide and 2 3/4 wide. So there's my second panel. And let's see, this one is, I'm going to flip the page. And I'm going to go ahead and burnish down. And I'm going to put my brick wall here again. That's going to be secured right in through here. So, Tombow liquid glue. Right through here. And just position it in here. And I push it right up to that, I abut it right up to here where I've married the other layers. And I'm going to take the You Touched My Heart. This one's going to go right here on the small panel. Again, it's going to be flat adhesive. And I'm going to take the little pot with that green foliage, and I'm going to put it right over that little message. So right through here. And then I'm going to put a little bit of adhesive on the back and tuck it right into the pot, like so. And on this side, we're going to do a little bit of stamping. I'm going to use the brick wall, and I'm going to bring in my piercing mat. We're going to stamp one of the pots and one of the plants right onto this, straight onto the designer series paper. So I'm going to take the leaf image and I'm going to stamp using Just Jade. And going to ink up nicely. And just stamp so that it fits right, like so. Pressing down firmly. I want some nice color on this since I am going onto a pattern. Whoops, there we go. And then I'm going to stamp the terracotta pot, and I'm actually using Cajun Craze for that. The nice thing here is photopolymer stamp set, so you can see right through for alignment. Putting it right around there. And I'm going to put one of my sentiments, the Grateful Sentiment, right on this page. I'm going to put it right around there. So flat adhesive again. I don't want the card to get too bulky. This should fit into the standard size envelope because it's going to wind up being 5.5 by 4 1/4. There we go. Oops, want that to be straight. And this gets put right onto this panel here. Right through here. Don't put it on upside down, right? Here we go. Right up through there. Align it there. And I'm going to use my bone folder to burnish it down. And flip it over. I'm going to go on to the next page. And this, actually, well, we got 3 more panels left. So let's see. The next one's going to be that cute little plant stand with the brick wall. So this is just going to be flat adhered. And then I'm going to be adding those die cuts to it right through here. This is just the sweetest sweet. I have to tell you, right next to my gym, a new little plant shop opened up, and it's just so trendy right now to have all the house plants. Of course, they're healthy to have around you because they clean the air for you. And if you have a green thumb and can keep them alive, they just add so much to the decor of the house. Unfortunately, it's hard for me to keep a cactus alive, so I go for the faux plants, but I'd love to be able to have live plants hanging around, especially with those macrame hangers. So trendy, reminds me of the 70s. Okay, so I'm going to put the little plant stand with my pot right in the middle here, and then I'm going to bring in one of the little die cuts. Looks like a succulent, and this was cut from the designer series paper. I didn't even stamp down, and you can see it's got all the different tones of green going on because that's what a plant would have anyways. It wouldn't be just one color, you'd have variation going on. And I'm going to tuck it right into the pot there. So right like so. So the opposite side is just going to be the, well, I think I need another, I don't want it to be just that because I did have, let's see. Let's see, I did want some more greenery there, so I'm going to cut another piece here. And it's going to be 4 1/4 high, so I'm going to cut 4 1/4. and it's going to be 2 3/4 wide. And this is just the designer series paper on its own. And I have to think here. Oh, put it on the card base, it's easier. Putting it right like so. And our last panel will be just a nice, the sandstone panel with that tall plant right through here. Burnish that down. And again, this is flat adhered. And every card is going to come out different. You want to use up all the little plants in these papers. You can also stamp them and die cut them. So one little thing we're going to do on this panel, we are going to add a place where we can sign and stamp our little sentiments. So I'm going to bring in, you can't really write on that sheet, so I'm going to bring in some of the Very Vanilla, just create a more narrow panel. But what I want to do is make sure that I can fit that thank you in there. So let's see. If I stamp this down, I'm going to work backwards, and I want it towards the top so we can sign on it. Let's see. I want to use my measurements. I'm going to flip my paper over, and oops, all I need is my measurements. So towards the top, and I want to see, yep, if I can do a, let's see, 2 1/4, but I want it at the top. So let's see. What I'm trying to do is measure out where the center would be. It's going to have to be pretty close to the edge, right like so. And I'm going to trim this paper down to 2 1/4. There we go. I'm going to put that aside. Go ahead and trim it to 2 1/4. Hopefully that clears the thank you just perfectly. And let's see if it's 4 1/4. I want to bring it down to about 3 3/4. And this is going to be centered right in here, so we can write a little message. Putting that right there. And I have a little tiny smudge going on my Very Vanilla. I'm going to show you how I'm going to cover that up. Right like so. And let's see. I need to see how this is going to lay out right there, like so. All right, so let me go ahead and put the little pot down. And let's see if I bring that down around there. And then I'm going to put a little adhesive behind, see where my smudge is on my paper. I don't know if you can see that or not, right in through there. I'm going to put my little succulent to cover that up. You can write your little message right here and sign your card. And let's have a look at what we created. So let's see. Here is our pinwheel card. So cute. I love this. Okay, a little note with the biggest thanks. We're going to flip. We have that pretty hanging plant. We're going to flip. You touched my heart. Grateful. And then thank you. And then you go back to the start. So when you put it on the shelf, here's what you're going to see. If you're looking at it at an angle, you can kind of get a glimpse of all of the panels. And I just think it's the cutest. One, I love the pinwheel fold, and two, I love this bloom where you're planted suite. It is just adorable. The colors are so calm and soothing, and the whole plant theme that's going on is really, really fun. So there you go. The Plentiful Plants to Create a Little Note of Thanks pinwheel card. All right, if you have any questions or comments, please post them down below. I invite you to shop this weekend or to register for the Pinwheel Fun Fold card class, and I thank you for joining me. Please share the video if you know of someone who might enjoy seeing the project as well. Thanks so much for joining.